Hello everyone, welcome to Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life by Veena World. We are your hosts Neil Patil and Sunila Patil. Today we are going to talk about a continent. We are going to talk about a place that is often known as like the ultimate bucket list item. Well, you're listening to this episode because you've already seen the title of this episode. It's Antarctica. We are going to talk about Antarctica. Antarctica is the highest, driest, coldest, and windiest continent on Earth. It covers 14.2 million square kilometers. The Antarctic ice sheet is the largest ice store on Earth. Well, in school, we were often told that the Sahara Desert in Africa is the largest desert in the world. But trust me, the Antarctic Polar Desert is actually a desert, and Antarctica classifies itself as the largest desert on our planet. If you think about Antarctica, there is no real time zone because when you're in Antarctica, you're very close to the South Pole. So you could probably be in a time zone that is very different to the time zone that you probably took the flight or the cruise to get to Antarctica in. Antarctica is also, like I said, the windiest place on Earth, but also the driest place on Earth. The dry valleys in Antarctica have such low humidity and moisture that it is super dry. And when I talk about windiest place on Earth, wind speeds can reach up to 200 miles per hour. Now, when we talk about bucket list items, we have a lot of bucket list items, but Antarctica, because I have been there, because Sunila also has had the opportunity to go there, we feel Antarctica is that bucket list item that should be on everyone's travel list or travel bucket list, as I can put it, because we just launched an expedition to Antarctica. And the name of that expedition is Antarctica, the seventh continent. Because like we decide we want to do these cities, these states in our country, we also feel that you should be able to do countries and also tick off all of the continents. So Sunil, I've spoken a lot. I spoke for the last 3 minutes, but that's how excited I am to speak about Antarctica. What is a good starting point and where should we start? Because you've been there, I've been there, we've been on separate expeditions, but it was like a great experience. So what's a good starting point?
I think Neil, you mentioned the name of our tour, Antarctica, the seventh continent, and I think that itself is a good starting point. That a lot of us have a bucket list, right? And we have different bucket lists for travel. And for me, I think we can start off with our own bucket list. And visiting all seven continents is something really special. To have said that, and I've seen quite a few eyebrows raised when you're speaking to someone, you say, "Oh, I went here and I went. Okay, I've done America, I've done South America," and then when you say, "Yeah, I've actually visited Antarctica as well," and people are like, I can feel that slight respect in people's eyes and voice when they start talking to you, right? So more than anyone else, I think it's for ourselves, because for me, I was really sure and I knew that I wanted to go and tick off all the seven continents of this earth.
Yeah.
That I want to go there. I want to see what it is, because I think it's one of those few places where which are still like neutral, which are still that does not belong to any one country, and
Yeah.
just it's not yet been completely taken over by humans in that sense. So, if you want to see the earth like it was, I think Antarctica is the best place. So, definitely having it as a bucket list item is fantastic, to have that seventh continent in there and to really visit it. So, I think for me that was really good. I don't know about you on how it was on your bucket list, or what were your thoughts about it.
I mean, I was lucky enough to go there when I was around 23 or 24 years old. And
Mhm.
like that's very early because you're on a cruise where there are people who have traveled the world. And today, I've traveled a little more than 42 countries. I still have to hit my 50 country barrier. I feel like I've traveled half the countries that you have done. But when I hit Antarctica, it was a surreal experience. So
Yes.
I have many questions over here. So what we'll do on this episode is that I'll ask the questions, you can answer them so that it becomes a question answer session and we go through most of the questions. So when
Mhm.
we talk about getting to Antarctica, there are multiple ways of getting to Antarctica. On our tour, we are taking the most exclusive, the most I don't know how to call it, the most expedition-esque journey that we are taking, which is we are taking a cruise to Antarctica. We are going on an expedition ship and we are going through Argentina. So first tell us, how are we going there? How are we going to get to Antarctica? And what is so cool about this expedition ship? And what should one expect? Because when we talk about cruising, all of us have been exposed to the great cruising companies of the world, the Royal Caribbean, MSC,
Right.
Star Cruises, all of that. But what can one
Right.
expect on this journey?
Yes, Neil. So to start off with, if you look at the world's map, Antarctica is at the very south. So you have to go to the southernmost areas of this world to reach there. You can access it through New Zealand also and some parts of Australia, but that's really more for research purposes. For in terms of tourism or travel or being able to just visit Antarctica and come, the best way to go is via South America. So what we do is we go to Buenos Aires and then we go to Ushuaia. Ushuaia is the southernmost tip of the world, as they call it. So it's a very beautiful city. I'm sure you were there as well, and I really love that city because small but easy to walk and easy to get around, and it's the perfect starting point to get to Antarctica. Because in case you want to rent some equipment, you want to rent a GoPro, you want to rent gloves, you want to rent walking sticks, poles, anything that you want, everything is available in Ushuaia to buy, of course, but you can just rent it because you probably have no use for it after the trip. So that's also easy. You can get in there and have the special gloves and stuff because you want to be ready for the weather when you're going there. Though we do visit in the Antarctic summer, which is quite a pleasant time to be there. So you start from Ushuaia, then your cruise is docked there. You embark your cruise in Ushuaia, and then you cross the Drake Passage and you go there. Now, the Drake Passage, I think a lot is heard and spoken about the Drake Passage. I don't know about your journey, but I had a really fun time on the Drake Passage. It was okay so far, but I think that's all part of the fun because the passage is quite rough. You need a ship which is really strong enough to take you there. And you mentioned about the expedition ships, and you mentioned about other ships like MSC and Royal Caribbeans and the other cruises that we know. But those are made for the oceans and seas around the Pacific, Atlantic, Mediterranean Ocean, and all of that. So if you want to visit the Bahamas, you want to do the Caribbean islands, you want to do the Mediterranean islands, those ships are great. But those are more like entertainment ships, and those are huge ships which can take like 4,000 or 5,000 people at a time. When you're visiting Antarctica, one, of course, there's a cap on the number of people who can visit because you want to control the tourism out there. Secondly, you're actually going through water, so you need a ship that is not just for entertainment, but more for scientific purposes, for research, for which can be like an icebreaker, which can cut through the ice if needed. And safety is much more important here than anything else. So I would say that when you're going to Antarctica, make sure that you're in a ship that you're so confident of being out there that you don't have to worry about that part for the rest of your journey, and that's how it should be. So we are taking a similar such ship, and it's quite a new ship, so I'm quite excited because a new ship means that it feels really fresh and new, and everything from the cabins on board to the facilities on board, everything is pretty new. When I say that, you don't they are not like very big ships like the ones that do the other cruises, the Caribbean cruise or the Mediterranean. But you do have like even a spa on board nowadays, which was not there when we went to Antarctica. But today, if you want to have a massage when you're on the way to Antarctica, you can. So the ships are built for that. The ships are built to make sure that you are much more stable when you reach the Antarctic waters, that you can cross the Drake Passage quite easily now. So it gives you this whole stable platform. And the smaller the ship, the closer you can get to Antarctica. So when we say we visit Antarctica, all of these cruise ships actually visit the Antarctic Peninsula. And when you're getting close to it, the best experience depends on how close can you get so that you actually can have a landing and go on the Antarctic shores, right? So when you have a very big cruise, then you're actually not reaching very close and you are seeing it, but you're seeing it from slightly far away. When you have a smaller ship, these ships can get really, really close to Antarctica, and then you have an up close view. And I think that's much more important than anything else. And as you'll see, most people who come on the cruise are not people who are looking for slides and pools and, all the frills on these cruises. For that, definitely go ahead and book a Caribbean cruise or a Mediterranean cruise. The aim and the goal here is something different. And I think you really nailed it when you said it's an expedition. So it's a beautiful expedition. It's something I think everyone should do once in their lifetime. So
I quite agree.
that's the kind of
And
cruise. And Neil, the cruise we booked, the rooms also, the cabins also have a balcony. So you can even enjoy the beauty of Antarctica from your room if you want to. You don't have to even come out on the ship.
so listeners, Sunila's talking about balconies. And one thing why balconies on your cruise ship are quite important is, or let me rephrase, on your cruise expedition ship are quite important, because when you're in Antarctica, you'll often hear your expedition guide, your expedition leader go on the public announcement system of the ship and be like, everyone, just bringing to your attention that we have killer whales swimming to the right of our ship,
Yes.
or to the left of our ship. Or often, because Antarctica is all mountains, you will hear a large sound, and suddenly in the distance and on one of the mountains, you will see an avalanche coming down and falling into the ocean. So for this, having that balcony really, really helps. Now, Sunila, of course, spaces are limited on this Antarctic expedition
Yes.
that we are going to take. And I keep saying exclusive because spaces are limited. And when you talk about Antarctica, if you just think of your friends, if you just think of your family, there aren't many in your social circle who would have actually done that. And when
Yeah.
we talk about travel, it's often that, okay, with money, you can probably go to the best hotel in the world, you can go do all of these experiences. But Antarctica is such an exclusive experience because not everyone really can go there. There are only certain cruise ship operators that are allowed to go there because they want to really
Yeah.
preserve the Antarctic Peninsula. So, of course, you mentioned that we go to Ushuaia. I'll just correct you there. It's not the southernmost point in the world, it's the southernmost city in the world. And an interesting
City in the
thing
world.
there,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Argentina has Ushuaia, and Ushuaia is the southernmost city in the world. Now, when
Yeah.
you embark on the ship, as you are going through the waters of Argentina, on the right side, you will find Chile. And if you think about the South American map, Chile is this thin country that goes all
Yes.
across like the middle and the southern part of South America. And your expedition leader and captain will announce as you're going through those waters that on your right side, there's a town, which is the southernmost town in the world. Now, Chile was like, why should Argentina enjoy all the spoils of the southernmost city in the world? So,
Mm.
what defines a city? Now, Argentina's explanation is that a city should have certain things. If a city has a port, if a place has a port, then it can be called a city. So, only recently, Chile reclassified this town or a village as a city now. And now there is a fight happening there whether Ushuaia is the southernmost city in the world or this place in Chile is the southernmost city in the world. And I've found that really fascinating because, when you have these records, then often people want to get more tourists over there. And that's why there's this fight going on. But let's come back to the Antarctic expedition. Now, you told us about how this is different from the cruise ship. Now, all of us know that there'll be hundreds of icebergs in Antarctica, right? So one question would pop to anyone's mind, that how does the cruise ship actually go through the waters? Is this something that just pushes the icebergs aside? Is it an act? Because is it an actual icebreaker? How does it really work? And is it safe to go there? Let me ask you that
Right.
question, because Antarctica is ice, 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 and all of that, right? So is it safe to go there?
Yes, Neil, it's completely safe to go there. And the really answer to this is that when do you go determines a lot of things. So you wouldn't really go at any other time except the Antarctic summer. So say by November, the ice starts melting and you can start going there by end of November, December. And then by Jan, Feb, the ice is pretty much melted, except for, of course, the icebergs and the, that are far away. So your ship can move through the waters quite comfortably. So I would say selecting when to go is a very important part here. And then till March end, probably you can visit Antarctica, though I would not suggest going too much after mid-March, because by then, it's starting to get cold again, the days are shorter,
Yeah.
etc. So when I would say anywhere from like say December until February and until mid-March would be a really good time to get there. So since the ice is already melted, it's easier for the ship. I mentioned to you that the ships are a little smaller. So these are about 90 to 100 staterooms. So about 200 people can be, and then of course the crew and all of them are out there. Make sure the vessel's really good so that it has the capacity to go through it. And most of your activities that are planned actually take place by the smaller zodiacs or the rafts. So what happens is when you come close to your landing, they will take you close to that place, and then you get onto a smaller, you start getting ready with your shoes and your gear and your parka. Parka is usually given by the cruise ship itself. They give you the shoes that are needed as well. So you really don't need to carry too much. You just need your thermals and your other stuff. And then once you're wearing all of those clothes, you're ready for it. You have your boots and you have everything, and then you transfer to these smaller boats, and then the smaller boats actually take you really close to the shore. You do your landings with the smaller boats, the zodiacs as we call them. Sometimes they just take you on a cruise on the zodiac. So all of that happens accordingly. Coming back to safety, I think it's up to the cruise company and the cruise ship, and that is why also it becomes really important to decide which cruise ship and how you're going by, how are you visiting Antarctica, because they keep it very flexible. So one thing you have to be ready is you have to be ready to be flexible out here. You can't go by the itinerary that is printed and point to them and say, hey, I missed this sightseeing and I didn't do this city tour. Usually what happens on our tours that you would do in the US, Australia, or Europe, or wherever else, or India for that matter, because everything's planned. You know that weather can't change too much, and you go through, even though even there can be changes depending on the weather. So everything here is weather dependent. If there is by chance a storm brewing or something, they will either cancel the landing or for your own safety, or they'll push it to another day. I remember when I was on cruise, we similarly had one landing and he said the weather is really bad. So I don't think we will be going there. They canceled it, which turned out to be the best thing. And I'll tell you in a minute why. But the next day, instead of 2, we actually managed 3 landings for whoever wanted to do it. So they try and cover everything within the time space that you're there on the ship. So to put it in short, you get onto the cruise, then you have about 2 days of crossing the Drake Passage. Then you actually reach Antarctica and you get a good 4-5 days out there. And then within those 4-5 days, all the activity happens. So they try and give you a variety of things. They try and show you a different kind of, different things out there. The wildlife, the research huts. You try and get a taste of the different activities going on out there, and then you come back on the ship. So when I was there and this landing got cancelled, and then we were resting in our rooms, and after some time the storm kind of cleared away, and I still remember it very clearly because it was a nice full moon and the moon looked stunning. It was shining, and like you mentioned sometime back, Neil, the captain announced that everyone come out onto the deck and be there, and we've run into a pod of orcas, the killer whales. And I mean, within like the next, I think 1 hour, we saw some 50 whales swimming in there, and it was sunset. It was just perfect. We would have missed all of this if we would have gone out on a sailing. So I was so happy that actually that day's sightseeing was cancelled. So if you keep flexibility, you have to trust them, and you know that you are in the best hands. So with that little flexibility, but they make sure that you do everything when you come back. So I think that's why it's really safe, and I felt very safe out there. So
Nice. So now going on to a tangent, huh? On our sister podcast, 5-Minute Travel Tips, which is of course like we make it live every Monday. We are trying to tell people that travel light, travel light, travel light, be a smart traveler. Don't you think Antarctica is an expedition where you literally don't have to take super cold jackets, you don't have to take boots or anything? So tell us a little bit, because I feel this is an expedition where you can pack very light in spite of you're going to one of the coldest places on earth, because you get 2 things. One is the parka, and one are the shoes that you can use for all of the landings that you can go for. So can you just throw some light on this?
Neil, you're absolutely right. Like I realized after going there that if I could have traveled with half the things that I had taken. Okay, so to get to Ushuaia, you have to fly through Buenos Aires. So you probably need a few city clothes, a few clothes to be when you're in Buenos or when you're in Ushuaia. But once you're on the ship, you don't really need that much. You just need maybe one dress to walk around when you're not doing the landings, and then you have those there's some excellent lectures on board that happen even right from, they teach you how to take photographs. So they have a photography session. They may have a session on the whales. They may have different, like all the biologists and all of them are there, naturalists are there, and they talk to you about wildlife and stuff. So maybe just for that time you need like a few clothes. But otherwise, when you're actually doing the landings, they give you the parka, and it's
Yeah.
so warm and wonderful that and you need to keep some place for that in your luggage, on your way back, because it's quite a big heavy, so there's no point in buying a jacket, or there's no point in taking, because all our jackets are useless out there. You can't really wear them except for maybe on the cruise, right? So
I
you
mean, you
can
have the
really
parka, right?
travel
You have
light.
the parka.
You have the parka,
Yeah.
and that is more than enough. And then you have the shoes as well.
Yeah.
So you really have to carry a few thermals. If you think you're going to be cold, then just take, and thermals can be extremely thin. So you can actually do the whole tour in a very small bag. Keep space for your cameras and your other things, because you may want to carry a special lens if you're into photography. You may want to carry a tripod. I ended up actually buying a tripod in Ushuaia because I just wanted to leave the camera on and have these little penguins running around and reach with the tripod where I wouldn't be able to reach, so that, and that was all fun. So I would say keep space in your luggage for all of these extras. You don't really even need to carry food with you. Like a lot of people are always worried about the food, and I think maybe we can talk of food and you
Yeah.
can tell me what was your experience. But I've seen that the food is amazing. I mean, they have like these elaborate 3-course meals for dinner. So you don't really need that unless there's something you think you're really going to miss, like the spice or something. Just carry a small packet of food that you would miss too much. But other than that, you absolutely don't need to carry too much because everything is given to you.
Yeah.
Just carry a few thermals. And in fact, a lot of the cruise ships also have these small shops where you can buy a few clothes or something if you feel you have the need to. Otherwise, you really don't need much. So thin thermals, long thermals, short thermals, and a few t-shirts or a few shirts, and you're done. Like you could practically pack for Antarctica in half an hour and get going if you had
Yeah.
to, with one small bag.
I quite agree. I'll only mention one more thing over here. You need pants, right? And you need pants that don't get wet when you sit in the snow. Often
Yes.
people take denims or jeans, right?
Yeah.
And a pair of jeans are always going to get wet, right? So it's not only Antarctica, any snowy place. One thing you shouldn't pack is denims, or one thing you shouldn't pack is just cotton pants. So you can take your thermals and then, like, rain pants or something really help, because the parka is probably the warmest jacket I've ever owned. And one of the good things is that you
Yeah.
have the parka over there. So that's one great thing. Now you mentioned the orcas, you mentioned the penguins, Sunila. I know you want to say something right now, but let me just
Yeah.
ask the question and then you
Yeah.
say it.
Sure.
What do you see in Antarctica? Is a good question that many people may be thinking that, okay, like, I often get a question that, oh, did you see polar bears there? But polar bears are not in Antarctica. They are in the Arctic and in the north, right? So you don't see polar bears there. But what do you really see in Antarctica?
So what you see, of course, if you come, is the wildlife out there, and you see how the wildlife is living out there. Not the polar bears. The polar bears are in the Arctic region in Canada and the entire Arctic region. What you do see are the whales that are always migrating. So I think for me that was the highlight, to be able to see the whales. If you're lucky, you will see different species of whales out there, the humpbacks, the orcas. You see all these different whales out there. You see the seals and you see the penguins, and they are just too adorable. I mean, different species of penguins, again, depending on where you're going, where you're landing. And it's amazing to watch them, because I think the penguins are in some ways the most human-like creatures, because it's funny to see them fight for the nest. They actually, when we were there, I remember, and the naturalists on board are with you. So when you're landing, they're telling you and they point out these little things to you. And we could see how there was this one penguin family, and where the male penguin was in charge of taking care of the little penguins and the eggs, and the eggs were hatching depending on what time you reach. And he would keep going and stealing stones from the other person's nest. And when that penguin came back, he would fight. So it was just so funny and cute to see that. And I think you can't really see these animals in their natural habitat anywhere else on the earth. So I think this is the best place to go and see them, because you may see them, but you may see them in a zoo. That's not really the way you would see them in their natural habitat. So it's like watching National Geographic or Discovery live. I think that was Antarctica for me. What you also see are some of the research huts. So you can get down and depending again on where you land, you see some of these huts where the scientists have been staying and how they've been working on it and what was being done. So you see all of that. You can also land on some of the black sand beaches, or the other beaches that were there, different beaches. And you also see how the whaling industry really took maybe use the resources a bit too much until regulations were brought in. So you see all of those effects. And one of the highlights again, Neil, for me was actually taking a dip in the icy cold water. So
The polar plunge,
cruises
as they
also
call it.
the polar plunge, and I think you did that as well.
Yeah.
So you're there and you keep thinking, should I do it, should I not? And for me, there was no other way. I just had to do it, because I said, I don't know if I'll ever come back, but I'm here and I want a dip in the Antarctic waters. So when we did it, our cruise was it was not by a beach. We were actually in the water, so they tied us, thankfully, and you jump in and then they help to pull you out, and I think they just give you a shot and keep you warm, so that but it was the most
How
thrilling
long
experience.
did you last in there?
I think it was, I would love to say minutes, but maybe it was a few seconds.
Yeah, I
I
think
don't
I
remember. It
was in
was a
there for
few,
like
yeah.
15 seconds. That's it.
Yeah, a few seconds, that's it. And then you can't, it's too cold.
It's too cold.
And
Yeah.
then they just
Yeah, I
took you.
remember.
But it's something that stays with you all your life, right?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it stays. And both of us got to experience two different types of polar plunges, right? You did the one, like you said, from the boat itself, you jump
From
in.
the ship.
I
Yeah.
had to run
Yeah.
from the beach. Like this was a black sand beach, and I had to run in. So you're already running in. So your like feet are already cold and all of that. But you mentioned that the penguins that you see, the penguin chicks that you see, when we were sitting in our product brainstorming sessions, our Antarctic expedition, which is in February, we decided February also for certain reasons. And I'd like to highlight that also here, because February, like you said, November to March is the time when, you can do the Antarctic expedition. But February is a time when whale spotting season also exists. You'll spot the max.
Yes.
Yeah. Or the chances of you getting to spot whales is very high in the month of February or starting of March. Then the penguin chicks are also very active and curious because the ice has melted to its most point, as you may want to say. So these penguin chicks will be chasing parents and food and all of that. And that's why, like, they often say that February is a great time. And finally, see, Antarctica is a place 6 months of darkness, 6 months of sunlight, right? And here in February, even if it's Antarctica, you'll get great weather. And great weather most of the time, or that's the likelihood. You can't predict the weather, but you will get great weather most of the time. So I think, yeah, like, that was one great thing. Now, of course, we touched on so many of these things, and then the Veena World Tour manager is also going to be there on this expedition.
Yeah.
Speaking about the food, right? Let's deep dive into how food or meals are served on this ship, because often people think that, okay, I'm going to go to the restaurant on a cruise, I'm going to order whatever I want, and that's how it's going to be. But here, breakfast, lunch, dinner timings are set, right? So do you want to throw some light on that?
Yeah, so it works like a cruise ship. The breakfast, lunch timings are set. They are also set so that you can make the most of your excursions. Because if you start going at any time, you'll probably miss an excursion if you don't go there and have your breakfast on time. And also it's different. I think it's when you're, you end up becoming like this one big community on board. So they will seat you accordingly as well. And I think it's really a lot of fun because everything is served to you. Mostly on these cruises there is always full service, and you're sitting on your table and you're being served with different things. And you can, of course, what we do, Neil, is also we kind of send the cruise company some requirements, especially when they have an Indian group, to make sure that there are some, maybe they may not be able to make exact Indian food, but something that is similar as well. But even otherwise, they make sure that the taste is adjusted, and the crew is really very welcoming and very accommodative with that. So they help you do that. And then of course again you have lunch, and then again there is a dinner time given to you. So it's best to stick to these timings because you have to. And then after that, the entire, so it's like when you're on a cruise, you will maybe wonder that, I'll have so much free time. So there is free time, but there are also programs, and an itinerary is actually chalked out, keeping everything in mind. So the earlier day, they send you your itinerary for the next day. And depending on where you're going, what kind of a landing are you doing, you're given your breakfast and meal times as well. So if they feel that you're going to have a longer duration of an excursion in the morning, the lunch may be a little later, or sometimes it may be a little earlier, and then you go off on an afternoon excursion as well. So they kind of balance these meal times and your excursions to make sure that you have enough time for both. And I found that the food was very filling and very good. And it comes to you course after course, people are serving you. So it does feel like a really nice cruise at the same time. I
Yeah.
mean, yes, it's an expedition ship, but it's full service. So it
Yeah.
was quite amazing.
I quite agree. And when you speak of the journey, of course, there are all these meal times, but there is also a cafe and bar on board. So, you can
Yes.
go there and like not order like actual hot meals, but you can order like snacks, and you can get any drink that you want. And, when we were going through the Drake Passage, and I mean, I'll tell you the story, but I think taking the ship from Ushuaia to the Antarctic Peninsula is an experience in itself. Like that is also a bucket list item, because you really feel how great the expedition is when you're playing that game with your fellow passengers, where we were like, on what longitude and latitude will the first iceberg be spotted? So what we did was, we
Mhm.
had like this sheet on in the cafe. Everyone had to go and write down the latitude longitude
Okay, fine.
coordinates where the
Wow.
first iceberg will be when we are hitting the Antarctic peninsula. So how we go is, from Argentina, you take the waters, you hit the Drake Passage, you have 2 days or 1.5 day through the Drake Passage, and finally you see the iceberg. You first hit the islands known as the South Shetland Islands, and then from the South Shetland Islands you go to through a strait which is known as the Gerlache Strait, and then you hit the Antarctic Peninsula, as we call it, right? So we played this game, and then of course I didn't win, but there were like so many, like 150 people on board. Someone won, and then what do you when you win? Some, like, someone will be like, okay, I'll buy their family drinks in the evening or something like that. So that was also a very fun experience that I had. And of course, I've been posting a lot of photos of this trip on my Facebook and LinkedIn. But Sunila, for the last 30 minutes, we've been speaking a lot about Antarctica, and we've been speaking a lot about the expedition. Do you think we've missed out on anything?
No, I mean, there is so much more that we can speak about, Neil. We could speak for the next half an hour and still be talking of Antarctica. Just want to mention one thing, that a lot of times, there may be a solo traveler. Like there may be just one person wanting to come alone. And then you wonder that, look, what if I can't, I don't want to pay a single occupancy, because it can be pretty steep to get the entire cabin to yourself and pay a single occupancy charge. So in this case, what happens is actually the cruise ship can help you out there, and they have a single share price which is like everyone else. And they will put you in with someone from any other country who's also traveling alone. So really a single traveler doesn't have to worry about it at all. You can join in even if you're a single person. I mean, even before that, of course, through Veena, we try to match up people and make sure that they have someone from our group to share the cabin with. But even if that doesn't happen, there is also always the cruise ship gives you an opportunity that, look, we will put you up with someone from some other country so that you don't have to take in the single supplement charge, which can be high. And of course, if someone wants a single cabin for themselves, they always have that opportunity to do that as well. So like, I think anyone and everyone can visit Antarctica, which is so great.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that you are allowed to do tours there right now, which may not be the case in the future, is also a great thing, right? And that's what I also was telling our product team that,
Neil, because you remember when we went, they are speaking a lot, of course, about conservation, sustainability, and the issue is there. And I saw that, and I was really touched to see that the efforts that people were taking on the cruise ship. And I think these cruises should run because it just increases our knowledge about the area. So I remember they called us in one day prior, before the excursions went on, like when you start sailing, and they actually vacuum each and every shoe that you're going to be using. They vacuum the clothes and everything to make sure that we aren't carrying anything that is not indigenous to Antarctica. So it's just amazing to see how much of precaution and care is being taken by the cruise companies as well. So,
yeah, and like whenever you go for the show landings and all of that, there's always one of the expedition leaders who will be there at the end trying to see if someone has left behind by mistake some stick, some plastic or whatever. Of course, plastic bottles don't exist only on the ship, but you want to conserve it as much as possible. So yeah, like I think, just to sum up a number of the points that we've discussed, when you go on the Antarctic expedition, one is you're ticking off a continent. It is record breaking. It is a bucket list item. For many, it will be the 7th continent. You're going to see all types of wildlife except, of course, the polar bear. If you're lucky, you'll also probably see whales attacking seals. You'll see penguin chicks running around in the snow, sliding in the snow, all of those things. Those zodiacs, which are those small boats that you always disembark from the ship on and visit the Antarctic Peninsula, offers a whole lot that you can certainly do. Now, I mean, I think we've covered everything. There's nothing that is left for, in my thing, that is to be covered. But I'll just say that, whoever's listening to this, you should go tick this off and be the first amongst your friends to go. And, when I'm discussing this, Sunila, because both of us have studied about Antarctica so much when we were planning this expedition that is happening next year in February, I'd let you end this episode.
Okay, Neil. So I would say that Antarctica is a place that it always stays with you. You have to go there once, and the memories just, I mean, they never fade. And definitely plan for it. I would say don't put it off for too long. If you can, visit it as soon as you can, because that's the best way to see it. When you're, you want to enjoy every bit of it. You don't want to be in a position whether I be able to do it. But let me say this, that everyone on the cruise ship really takes good care, and they make sure that you get there. And of course, the Veena, our tour manager, is also there with you. So different kinds of penguins, to see them in their natural habitat, to see the seals, to see the whales, and everything else that Neil described is probably a really, I would say, a lifetime experience, and something that stays with you. So definitely, and February is the best time to get this. I'm so excited about this Antarctica cruise, that tour that we'll be going on, because like they say that, I think the moon is the only other thing that we should aim to get there now. But before that, let's visit Antarctica.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sunila. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're listening to this episode and you would love to go to Antarctica, you know where to write us. It's Neil, Neil, @veenaworld.com, or Sunila @veenaworld.com. But if you want to book the trip, you can just go to veenaworld.com and you can find all of the details there. We look forward to seeing you on this Antarctic expedition. And if you don't plan to do it this year, put it on your bucket list, because that should be in front of you on your softboard, at home, at work, because this is a trip of a lifetime. After this, there's not much that, people can add to their bucket list. Then it's the Arctic and a whole lot more. But like Sunila said, the moon now is within reach, as we have seen. So Antarctica should definitely be on your bucket list. Thank you so much. We will see you the next time.
Thank you.